Hi, I'm Gayla Scrivener, ex-corporate girl and now work-from-anywhere adventure seeker. Creating a work-from-anywhere lifestyle isn't without its challenges, but those challenges certainly don't overshadow all the many benefits. What breaks my heart is seeing folks stuck and unhappy in a career and lifestyle when they want more out of life. I believe that we all have the opportunity to create the life of our dreams and earn a living in fun and creative ways to make our dream lifestyle a reality. You too can experience wonderful adventure and freedom as you live life on your own terms. In this weekly podcast, I share experiences when it comes to growing a lifestyle business through guest interviews, content marketing experience and perspectives, virtual leadership lessons, and I'll even throw in some travel adventures. My hope is through all the interviews, the tips, advice, and personal experience, you'll be inspired and motivated to keep going and creating your dream lifestyle. Life's an adventure. There's no time but the present to live life to the fullest. Hi there and welcome to the show. Today I'm honored to bring onto the show Dr. Sheila Cornea. Now she believes that everyone was created to make a unique contribution to this world. And with a little guts and a lot of tenacity, every dreamer can become a difference maker. Her practical wisdom has made her a sought-after speaker, online educator, and leadership consultant. In addition to leading her own community, Gutsy Grace Leaders, Sheila has led in education, nonprofit, and ministry organizations from startups to enterprises. When she's not leading a mastermind or coaching clients, you'll find her prepping for her upcoming podcast, exploring the latest apps, currently being Clubhouse, or FaceTiming with her 4 grandkids, likely while sipping a latte. Well, I'm really anxious for you to meet Sheila, and so let's hop right into the conversation, shall we? Welcome, Sheila. I am so glad that you're here today.
I'm glad to be here. Thanks for having me on your show, Gayla.
Well, I'm so excited for you to be here because we met a few years ago at a Ray Edwards event, at his copywriting live event in Franklin, Tennessee.
Yes.
We've not really had a chance to talk since then, and I'm super glad to be able to take this opportunity to kind of catch up a little bit. Before we get started, I'd love for you to tell my listeners a little bit about yourself.
Okay. Well, I've had a pretty diverse leadership background. So let me start with what the common thread is, because I think that kind of tells who I am, which I think is usually more important than what we do, because what we do changes so much. I would call myself a developer, a teacher, and a connector. That's really how I show up in the world and what I love to do most. And so for me professionally, that has looked like everything from teaching middle school to being a school principal, leading a nonprofit, being a church pastor. And what I love most is what I do now, which is leadership consulting and coaching. And I also work with a lot of Gen Z and millennials at university level. So I really help people develop into the leader they want to become. And we're always doing that as leaders, right? We're always progressing and sharpening our skills. And sometimes we have bumps in the road. So I really like to help other leaders over the bumps to make it to the end.
That is awesome. And in talking with leadership, I had transitioned from leadership from the corporate world. I was in the corporate world for 20 years and then right into entrepreneurship. Did you find that leadership in different roles like that was different?
I think the dynamics can vary quite a bit. There are a lot more commonalities than we think, though. I have, as I said, spent a lot of time in nonprofit and in ministry. In working with a lot more solopreneurs and entrepreneurs now, I find that there are a lot of commonalities that I didn't expect to see. And those also show up in my corporate clients, which is feeling overwhelmed with responsibilities. We all say we wish we could clone ourselves so we could get more done. Fear to delegate often shows up. Imposter syndrome shows up quite a bit. So there are a lot of common threads. And I think the differences come in what we want out of life. And so whether that's an achievement-oriented reward or a financial reward, significance reward. I really think that's more of a differentiator than the industry you work in.
I know that you have a Gutsy leadership type of program. What is Gutsy leadership?
Yes, so years ago, I think it was back in 2004, and I found myself at that point searching for a mentor, as a woman in an executive role, because there weren't many around me where I was working. And in fact, there weren't any around the leadership table. I was the first girl sitting around the table in that particular organization. I found that I was perceived as either being maybe too gutsy or too gracious. And it seemed like people wanted to put the other women in the organization as well in these boxes of, being too strong, or women feeling like they had to be almost a doormat to combat not coming off as too strong. That's how the name Gutsy Grace came up. And it just kind of has evolved into really what I think a lot of women strive to do, is show up with, full confidence and courage in who they are, and be authentic in what they really want to achieve and how they want to help the world, but do it with grace. And so, you don't have to be that witchy type presence to be a strong female leader. And I think we can do both. And so it's just really a reminder to all of us that we can do both. Strangely though, Gayla, because I work mostly with women, a lot of men have said, I like that. Like, just because I'm a guy doesn't mean I don't want to also be kind and empathetic. And so it kind of relates to a lot of servant leaders, I think.
Wow. Yeah, I think so. I know that I too had struggled through my leadership. It's like, what role model do I have? Who can I talk to? And sometimes within the organization, it's hard to find somebody because there's competition and things like that. How do you find a good mentor out there? And thank goodness what we have nowadays with being able to find the resources like you, that we can talk virtually and be connected. Now, can anybody be a leader? I mean, is it a born trait? Is it a learned? What's your take on that?
That's your century-long argument, right? That leaders are either born or made. Well, first of all, I would not call myself a born leader. I would call myself more of probably an unexpected leader. I'm the middle child of 3 girls. I'm an introvert. I often, growing up in school, was the one that got the note sent home saying, not working to her potential, should speak up more in class, that kind of a thing. I was not the kid on the playground telling every other kid what they should be doing. Sometimes you can see that on the playground and you think, oh, that kid was born to be a leader. Now, I have an older sister, Sherry, and she's kind of a born leader type. And she would be the kid on the playground saying, okay, your time on the slide is up. You need to move over to the swings and give someone else a chance. Like, I would have never done that. She didn't have any problem doing that. So I think in her case, she was probably born with more leadership tendencies. But I think we all have a choice to step into leadership and to develop as a leader. I think anyone can definitely be a leader. It's a matter of what kind of leader they're going to be. There's so many different leadership styles that everyone's not going to lead in the same way, certainly. Some people are going to be more of that charismatic, dominant type leader, but there are many of us in the world that really are have a softer approach maybe, or a more collaborative approach, servant leadership style. And it doesn't mean that we're not leading, that we don't have influence in the world, and that we're not intentional about how we want to influence the world. I think it really does come down to how you want to show up and how you want to influence. I also think, we sometimes forget the whole idea of, are we talking about good leadership or bad leadership in the result of what's happening? So we've had very strong leaders in the world, but the outcome of their leadership was intended to be bad or to cause harm. And so, we certainly don't want to do that. We want to be leaders that intentionally cause good. and have, a positive influence in the world. And so I think how we nurture that leadership is really what makes us the type of influencer that's needed around us. Really, there are some people with really strong leaders. Some people call it leadership or bossy dominant tendencies. They're not intentionally nurturing the people that are following them. And they may not even have anyone following them. I can't remember who said the quote. It's a really old one, but if you are a leader out on a walk and no one's following you, you're really not a leader. When we say a leader, I have a granddaughter who's 15 and she's a leader in her own right with her friends, and she's the one doing the influencing and not the one absorbing all of the influence. And so I think it doesn't matter what stage you're in. If you take responsibility for the influence that you have around you, that makes you a leader. It's how you want to develop that and expand that capacity will really determine your reach as a leader.
Well, in transitioning from corporate world to entrepreneurship or solopreneurship, many folks that I've talked to is like, hey, I don't want to have to lead a team. When you're an entrepreneur, you're automatically a leader.
Yeah, whether you really want to be or not. But again, you get to decide what expansion you want to have it, in your leadership. Mm-hmm. So yeah, maybe you don't want to have a team of 20 people. And that's where people like you offering great services and help come in handy, right? Because you don't have to be fully responsible, but you still have a community that you're serving. And so whether it's a team that you would call employees or volunteers, or it's the community that you're serving, people are looking to you for your expertise, your guidance, your concern. We call that, leadership. And so if people are looking to you for answers and you're giving them those answers or those solutions, then whether you're a reluctant leader or an intentional leader, you're still going to find your place there, unless you're a recluse and have no contact with the world, So you're going to end up a leader, but you get to control that population that you lead. And so it's okay if you just want to be a really great leader for 10 people and that's who you want to have that sense of ownership and responsibility to lead, then that's fine. You can make a significant impact in those 10 lives. But some people are willing to expand beyond that and have, I call it internal and external groups of people or community that they are leading. And so that would be your team. I would imagine for you, I know you have a lot of hobbies and interest in things. And so you have your staff that you're leading. You also have hobby groups, and you're probably, I would imagine, seen as a leadership voice in some of those circles. Many of us have church communities or civic communities, and we may take on a leadership role there. So it might not even be one big group of 10,000 people. It might be 4 small groups of 100 each. You get to have the influence you want to have. But I do think what separates those who are just have people following them and those people that are really leading people is the intention behind it. Are you really intentionally taking into account and are you serving people? Because leadership really isn't about numbers. It's not about personality. It's about serving other people.
If you don't recognize yourself as a leader, but you you are, maybe you're thrown into a position and you're like, I don't know what to do. What's one tip that we could do to become a better leader, to fit into our role that we might have found ourselves in?
Well, I had, when I was a new teacher, I think I was maybe in my 2nd or 3rd year of teaching. I was very young and didn't have, I would say solid confidence in what I was doing. And I had a wonderful, she became a mentor. She was my principal, Dr. Flora Hare. She came to me one day and she said, I want you to head up this committee. Immediately I said, oh, wait, I don't know how to do a committee. Like, I don't even know what to do. Like, I wouldn't know how to create an agenda. I don't know how to handle problems. I don't know. And she said, it's okay. I'm going to lead you through it. I'm going to help you create the agenda. I'm going to sit in on your meetings with you and give you feedback afterwards. I'm going to guide you through it. I did not want to do it. But she was one of those leaders that really didn't take no for an answer very easily. And so she said, no, you'll be fine, which was her way of saying, no, you're going to anyway. And so she did. She honored her word and she mentored me through that experience. And ever since then, I've learned the value of taking a risk to be vulnerable, Because I think that's what it really comes down to when we find ourselves in these new situations. If we feel that hesitancy or that resistance, like, whoa, I don't know if I want to do that. I don't know if I can do that. Oftentimes it is because we're feeling that vulnerability, and we don't want to take the risk to expose that vulnerability, really, right? Like, we automatically go to the worst that can happen rather than the best that can happen. And so I think leaning into that vulnerability can really help you to see yourself as other people see you. Because if you are placed in a position of leadership, that is a great compliment. That means someone else sees in you the ability to accomplish it. And so what's required of you then is to step into that, to take the risk to believe them. I love, there's a quote by Rich Litvin, and it says that he said, confidence is a result, not a requirement. I go back to that very often when I still feel intimidated sometimes when I'm invited to, speak to a specific group maybe, or strangely enough for me, it's often my university peers because they're so smart, they're high academics. And so I get a little nervous, I was invited to speak to that group of financial advisors. I don't know much about that, but I can either step into that vulnerability or I can lose the opportunity to influence. And so it really does come down to that.
Obviously, when you're given this role, somebody has seen something in you that you might not necessarily see. It's okay to be uncomfortable stepping into it.
Yes,
just taking one step at a time. That's amazing that you had a mentor or a leader that would guide you through it. What if you don't have somebody that you feel like you can talk to, like, you're thrown into it and then it's like a sink or swim type of scenario?
Yes, I think that the best thing that I did, and I can't say it was because I had so much wisdom, it was out of desperation. And I sat down at Google one day when I was at that organization and I was the only girl around the table.
Yeah.
And all of the other 12 people around the table would go off and play golf and have all of their side conversations playing golf, and they never invited me to play golf. I didn't know how to play golf. I didn't really want to learn how to play golf, but I didn't even get invited to go play golf. And so I sat down desperately at the keyboard one day and typed in female, mentor, education, ministry, Christian, all the keywords that I thought might lead me to the right person that was a good fit for me. And I got involved in a mentoring group really quickly. Now, that was years ago. That was a couple of decades ago. It wasn't as easily found as it is today. What I think today, every leader should probably be in a mastermind group of some sort. I think those are highly valuable. Sometimes it's a little tricky. You have to go through a few until you find the one that you really like. This is my tribe. These are my people. They get me. But there are some very finely attuned niche masterminds. So if you're an education leader, you could probably find a group of other educators. And as you said earlier in our conversation, oftentimes there's competition. And I know when I was a nonprofit executive in a community in Florida, I couldn't just go, cold call another nonprofit executive leader in my town and say, hey, can we meet for coffee and talk about our challenges? Because it would have been inappropriate. We're, kind of seen as competitive charity organizations, scratching for the same dollars or something like that. I can do that in a mastermind of 10 other people from the same industry that are dealing with the same problems, but they're not competition at all. I'm actually even in a mastermind now that's from all different industries. But we do have some commonalities in that we're trying to build in marketing and branding and learn the same things. And so there are different types of masterminds. One thing that I wish I would have done earlier in my entrepreneurship was to find a one-on-one coach. I joined a lot of courses and a lot of group coaching programs, but looking back now, and the advice I give to my clients or the young millennials that I work with is I tell them, I think the best thing you can do is find a good group coaching program if you're wanting to learn something that you can start to develop this peer group. You're all going in the same direction. You're sharpening each other, holding each other accountable, but add to that some one-on-one coaching with that group leader so that you get some of that personal feedback, because we all are on a similar journey, but we have our own unique situation on that journey. And sometimes we need that one-on-one feedback. I wish that I would have done that earlier. I mean, I certainly always have a coach now and always have a mastermind now, if not one, then two. And I favor those more than a lot of other things that are out there that we can do. I also think that it's very valuable to just find people that are further ahead in the journey that can just be life mentors to us. Because I found as a leader, it wasn't just about my leadership skills for that business situation or leading this team of people. It really was about how to balance life. How do you raise your kids and also climb the corporate ladder? How do you stay healthy or overcome illness and not really bring that to work with you or hinder your team's work? There are a lot of other issues that we can use life mentors for that maybe they're not our business coach, but it might be that for me, it might be like a 75-year-old family member that can give me guidance, or the lady that sits beside me in a Bible study, or the gal that I'm in Toastmasters with that's 20 years ahead of me in the journey and knows some things. Those are the kind of people that can say, this too shall pass. Don't get so hung up on this one little thing. It's going to pass and you're going to be fine. I think there's just so much value in that. I think that that's probably the best thing that we can do to grow. However, I do think that if I can share, there's 4 areas that I usually encourage my clients to develop. Like, always have a development plan for these things. One is your community, always building community. And that goes back to that mastermind. That's kind of the first thing, is building community so that you have that internal community, external community. And we usually think about who are the people we're serving, but also who is that support system that we have around us, which is community. And then authenticity and alignment is another area. Always staying authentic to really who you want to be, how you define success. And that requires some work. It really does. We can dig deeper into that if you want. Another one is having a strategic plan for your work. Otherwise, you get out of alignment really easily if you don't have a strategic plan. But I have a strategic plan for my health. I have a strategic plan for, my future retirement, financial. We have, all kinds of, sometimes we don't like to call it strategic plan because it sounds so lofty, but have some goals, have some goals in every area, not just work. And then also have a tenacity plan. I mean, that's something I could talk about for probably the whole day if we had time, but that's the thing that blindsides us, I think, Gayla, is we have great plans and strategies for success, but we don't always include in there, how are we going to go from this is my game plan to this is my stay in the game plan? Because especially with entrepreneurship, I mean, I don't know about you, but almost every entrepreneur I know has that day where they go, I don't think this is worth it anymore.
Absolutely.
This is too hard. No one told me about this. I'm tired of being isolated. I want to go out in the world, or I'm tired of all these people pulling on me, or I can't learn one more technical thing, or my mind is going to shut down, And so if we don't have a plan for something as simple as, okay, when I get to the point where I can't book any more one-on-one clients, then I have to stop booking clients, or I have to outsource some things, but I can't just keep expanding my hours so that I'm working 12 hours a day, because then that's going to impede your relationships and your health, right? But if you never think about it on the front side and you don't have an intentional plan for it, then we get into that creep. We get into our schedule creep, our personal time creep. I know a lot of entrepreneurs that I work with. It's the same in education and nonprofit. Very often corporate work, when someone has full responsibility for maybe a department or key performance indicators, that these things must be done every day. I find that we will set aside our own personal agenda for the greater good, especially as women. I see this a lot, and servant leaders do this a lot. And when we do that, we're not going to have strength for the full game. It's like running a marathon at a sprint pace, and you're just not going to be able to do that for as long. And so I think those are the 4 main areas that I usually try to start with, like, let's start getting some of these things that we're mindful about. And I think that's an immediate way that we can start to have an intentional development plan to grow. I think reading books, taking courses, all those things, those will enhance our mind, but I'm interested in life. Who are we going to show up as in life and in our families and for our friends and for our purpose? If we're not thinking about how we're pacing toward our future, then we are likely to, for lack of a better word, die out before our time, because, and I've done that, I've gone through the adrenal exhaustion because I was running too hard, too fast for too long. And finally, my body just said, okay, now it's time to rest. And I did, but I could have prevented it. And so I really, that's one thing that I wish a lot more leaders, entrepreneurs, and corporate leaders could really grasp, that this is a very long game and we have to treat it as such and take care of ourselves.
Planning for the future. When you said the Tenacity plan, I immediately thought, it's like, oh man, I got to work harder. But as you explained it, it's knowing what you're doing now. And as you grow, you have a plan for when you outgrow that bubble of time. Or, right now for me, I'm thinking of different revenue streams for the long-term goals. Some of it is very slow going, like having rental property that right now is like, I've got mortgage on that. I've got tenants, and I'm not making any money at all.
Right.
And the loan is so gosh darn long, but it's the long-term gain.
Yes.
And that tenacity on keeping with it.
Yes. It's, a lot of people talk about resiliency, which is, you also important for leaders. Something difficult happens, you hit some barriers or obstacles, brush yourself off, get back on, start riding the bike again. But tenacity is a little different because you don't feel it sneaking up on you sometimes that you want to give up. And then all of a sudden it'll just hit you like, this isn't worth it anymore. This is costing me too much. It's too frustrating. And it really is that consistent action over time that will breed the results that you want. And so I use a little acronym. I have to use this for myself because deadlines, I'm like, they help me to accomplish things. Otherwise, I tend to be a slow pacer. I'm the turtle, not the hare. And so deadlines really kind of push me. But a little acronym I use is ACT, A-C-T, apply commitment today. Like sometimes I just have to say, be committed. Like this is what your future is asking of you. So be committed. Because I think maybe I wasn't as aware when I was in my 30s. I'm in my 50s now. I don't know, somewhere when I turned 50 around that time, I started seeing my future differently. And I started seeing, first of all, it's more limited than it used to be. I'm not going to, all of a sudden I didn't feel invincible that I was going to live forever. I started counting days a little bit more. And what I wanted to do with those days became more and more important. And also thinking like, okay, what do I want to be doing in 20 years? What do I want that life to look like? And I hadn't really done 20-year forward thinking. At that point, it was like, 3 to 5 years, maybe 10 years. And it was very career oriented. Now I'm in a place, okay, 25 years forward, what kind of life do I want? Who do I want to be? And what contribution do I want to make in the world? And if I'm going to get there then I have to do these things now. And so if I'm going to be healthy and agile and ready to travel whenever the offer is made, then I can't eat the things I want to eat every day because that's not going to equip my body to get there. And I'm not a health junkie. Like that for me, that's work, to say no to the donut and yes to the salad. And so, but I have to think about it and say, okay, I have to apply this commitment today. Otherwise, my future self is going to suffer. And it's the same in business, that we have to be committed every single day to doing those things that moves our business more toward the goals that we have. Because I don't know anyone that says, I love 100% of my work. There's usually one or two things that just, we have to do them because it's part of it. But if we can delegate that or outsource that, it's all the better, right? Mm-hmm. And so that's why I love the kind of work that you do, because it's come alongside of work, that you're doing, and can lift the burden. And that in itself gives someone tenacity. When those things like give me a spreadsheet or tell me I have to do statistics and data, and I just immediately want to just die.
Yep.
If someone told me I had to do that 8 hours a day for the next 15 weeks, you would have to pay me a really large sum of money to say yes to that, because that just drains me. You know what drains you and what energizes you, right? And so it would be really poor leadership measure for me to say that needs to be done, so let me do it. Meanwhile, emotionally, I'm draining. Physically, I'm draining. Intellectually, I'm draining. Probably getting grumpy, so no one even wants to talk to me anymore about it, where I could just outsource that to someone on my team that probably loves doing it and would do it with joy and better competence than I could do it, or I hire someone to do it. And then that frees me up to work and live in that development, creative state that I can really thrive in and make a better difference in. And people will like me better because I'm happier, right?
Right. There's so many layers of leadership, and it seems to boil down to communication and knowing yourself and figuring out how to maximize your style. And I think we as women, we do have a different style than men. I mean, there's traditional gender roles and everything like that. And in my past, I'd see women as either the bulldog, and and I think you mentioned witchy, and you just stay out of the way. Yeah, stay out of the way. And then you've got the pushovers.
Yeah.
And I don't know how I'd fall in that, but I would try to strive for being not a motherly type person, but we as women need to be respected in our roles. And sometimes it's just hard. I think it's gotten easier. Our corporate world has gotten easier for women. There's still a lot of work to do, but you mentioned that the golf good old boy club, and left you behind. You were the only woman around the table.
Yeah.
That can be intimidating. And how would you enter into that world and thrive in that type of environment without being a man? I guess.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't want to turn into a man. I think it's great to be a woman.
Yeah. I think that, ultimately at the core, we have to, as a society even, we talk about diversity so much, and in regards to all types of diversity, there's a lot of work to be done. But I think it does come down to respecting the qualities of other people that maybe we don't have, but we can appreciate. Like, I'm often asked, what's the biggest problem you see in organizations? And my quick go-to answer is communication. I also have observed in leaders that ask me to come in, like, I can't get my team to do what I need for them to do. Come help me figure out what their problem is. Typically, I find out, well, it's your communication. That's what the problem is. It's either a lack of communication or communication not done very clearly or very kindly, oftentimes. I wanted to dig a little deeper to that because I thought, well, why don't we communicate well? What is it about so many leaders that we don't, it's not intentional that we don't communicate well. So what's the root of that? It occurs to me that it's most likely ego. And so ego is, a person's self-perception. It's our own perception of how we hold esteem for ourselves or how we hold importance in ourselves. And we've all seen that side of ego that comes out haughty, right? Like, I think I am the most important person in the conversation. Therefore, it kind of comes across as that haughtiness. But we've also seen where it may come across in great humility or humbleness, where it's also out of scale, to where it's, I'm the lowliest person in the room. I shouldn't speak up. I'm not going to be regarded well. And so we think so lowly of ourselves that also we're not communicating forthright because of that. Both of those can be brought into moderation. But I think that those are really the root of why we have a lot of communication problems, whether that's intentional or not. We hear a lot about imposter syndrome, which is over there on that humble side of things where, I don't feel like I'm quite ready for this. As we were saying earlier, like, why would you ask me to lead that? I'm not ready. And so it might be working on our confidence, or knowing like maybe we're really not cut for something. You have to know that about yourself.
Mm-hmm.
We have to know things about ourselves and be able to say proudly, that's not what I'm about. I'm about this over here. If you need help with that, be happy to, but that's just not my thing over there. I think that a lot of times we as female leaders don't want to speak up and say no, because we're afraid it's the only opportunity that's ever going to come past us. That's, there's always more opportunity in the world. So you don't have to take those things that don't align. That's why it does go back to authenticity and staying in alignment with who you are. So I'm a personality junkie. I mean, give me any kind of personality assessment. I will take it. I love it. I love knowing what everybody else's personality is, what their giftings are, all the talents. And so, the hot one now is Enneagram. So
Mm-hmm.
I'm an Enneagram 9 and I have an 8 wing. I'm pretty much easygoing. I like peace, but I can flip over to the 8 side. If I see someone being mistreated, then I'll, social justice, and I'll come to there. And so some people have seen me only in that 9, let's chill out. Oh, I don't care. Whatever you decide, I'll go along with it. Some people have seen me in that 8, which is kind of that bulldog, like, you did what? You can't talk to her that way. Sometimes they think, like, which one is the real me? Well, they're both the real me. Sometimes we forget that every one of us has so many facets, that we're not just one-sided. We're not a flat. Years ago, there was that travel character that was like Flat Stanley. I don't know if you ever saw him, but he traveled around the world. He was just a little cardboard piece.
Yep.
We're not Flat Stanley. We're 3, 4 multi-dimensional. We're faceted like a diamond. And so according to how people look at us, they're going to see something different. We can't always be posturing and posing in such a way that we're trying to put an image in front of people that we want them to see, but we do have to manage ourselves in such a way that we're being authentic with everyone. And I think there's some nuances of difference there. I'm not a social psychologist or anything like that, but I think that we can easily identify what the barriers are to us being authentic, which will derail our communication. It absolutely will. Whether that communication is in our marketing message, in our branding, or in our one-on-one conversations with people that we're mentoring, or customer feedback, our exchanges with people. So 3 of those barriers, one is comparison. So me comparing myself to you, or me comparing myself to a mentor I had. And there's one thing in trying to follow a role model, but there's another thing in comparing myself to them and saying I'm less than because I don't do it that way, because I don't have good statistical analysis skills and desires, doesn't make me less of a leader. It just makes me a different leader, and different should be valued equally, right? And so I can't look at someone to say, oh, they did that presentation and they did their PowerPoint all wrong and they're not really a very good public speaker. They must be a lousy leader. Well, that's not accurate. Maybe they're just not a great presenter, but they may be way better than me in leading their team toward a goal and achieving it. And so we have to respect different skills and different ways of achieving success. I think that's one of them. Another barrier is criticism. And so this can be, in our own criticism of ourselves, and absorbing criticism of other people. We're all going to get criticized in some way at some point. You're probably, if you're leading and you're doing it well, you're not going to make 100% of the people happy at 100% of the time. Mm-hmm. And so you're going to get some criticism, and you're also going to have that recording in your head that's self-criticizing. Mm-hmm. That can be a barrier if we don't get that under control. And so we have to filter that to go, okay, what part of this is true? What part of this is helpful? And then use that and let the other part slide out. The third one is competition. Competition can be a driver for a lot of personalities. It can actually be a very good quality. One of my granddaughters, she has high competition, which for a female, in the right jobs can really be powerful. In other positions, it can really be hard to manage because other people don't respect it as much. For her, she doesn't even care if it's respected. That's just who she is. And she's young enough that she hasn't had life knock it out of her yet, thank goodness. But is a driver for her. So if she sees a kid over there that makes a 98 on a test, she's driven to want to make a 99. If she sees someone shoot 5 baskets in a row, she wants to do 6. So it helps her to measure, I'm being successful in a positive way. But very often we flip that into a negative and say, because I'm not doing more than they're doing, then I'm not as good as them, or I'm inadequate, or we're using the wrong measuring tool. So the way you measure success and the way I measure success may not be the same. And so if you're measuring success by your measuring tool, and then I try to use your tool to measure my success, then I'm never going to feel like I've really achieved my own success. And I'm always going to feel less than what I should be. And so an example might be, what is your reward driver? So for some people, it is rank and title, right? Working in that corporate position, climbing the ladder, getting the corner office. Like that might really be someone's driver. And I commend them that they know what their driver is, and achievement orientation is great. It helps them get where they want to be, but that's not a driver for me. And so if I try to do that, which I did, and I did climb up and I did get the office and I did get the title, and then I was like, well, now what? I'm still not like, I don't feel successful. Like I feel like I'm missing something, and I don't feel like I'm doing the right work. And I left that whole career field and went to a new one that better matched my drivers. Now I could have stayed there and let competition trying to compete against the wrong things and get the wrong kind of success. I could have stayed there and probably been, by some people's standards, successful, but personally that wasn't a good measurement for me. I also saw my leadership qualities start to diminish because it was a barrier for me. I wasn't finding joy. I wasn't finding internal success. I had external success, but I didn't internally feel successful. And that kind of came out in my work, the joy of my work and leading other people and not getting them. I don't know if you've ever heard, like, they don't get me and I don't get them. I was in the wrong arena and I had to just move the arena, and I became very, very successful again, but by my own standards. So all of those things go back to communication, because the way we see ourselves filters the way we see and respect other people. And we can't really communicate well with other people if we are so puffed up about ourselves that we don't respect them. We can't sit in their shoes. Or also if we think that we're so lowly, or we're so lacking joy or purpose or meaning, that we don't think what we're bringing to the table matters. That's a really long answer, I know, but I think it's important to unravel all of those things. It's not just as simple as, did you send out enough emails? But it's, what was your motivation in the email? How many times did you send it? And did you also pick up the phone and have a voice-to-voice conversation, or look at someone in the eyes and see if it was a two-way communication,
Defining success by our own ruler. I think that is really important, because there's so many outside factors and we all have a different view of what success really means. And yes, we need to remember that.
Yeah, I was listening the other night. I'm into Clubhouse right now. I'm exploring it. It's the new app, so I'm exploring it. I'm listening in on some of the conversations. And I heard Barbara Corcoran, one of the Sharks, was on one of the Clubhouses, and I was listening to her. Somebody asked her about having children and being as successful as she is. And she said, well, first of all, I didn't have my child until I was late in my 40s. And she said, I had always said and always heard that you can have it all. Women are told you can have it all. You can have the babies, you can raise the babies, you can do the job, you can do this, you can do that. And she said, I couldn't do it all. She said, I thought I was going to be able to do it all. And I found that I couldn't do it all as well as I thought. Like, I couldn't still show up at the office in the same way that I used to. And I had to change my own expectation of myself and other people's expectation of me. And so I think that's what we forget, is we go through seasons in life and in leadership, and we can't always show up the same way. We're the same person, but we can't show up the same way in every season. And we have to respect the season we're in as we grow through leadership too, and life in general.
This has been a delightful conversation. I have learned a lot, and leadership whether we're leading a small group, leading ourselves as solopreneurs, we're leading in some form or fashion, whether it's implied or what's the other word? Explicit.
Yes,
You have the
yes, yeah.
title. We are all leaders in some way. What's the future you have planned for Gutsy Grace Leadership? What do you have?
Well, I'm my exciting new thing that I'm working on right now is a podcast, and so I expect that
Yay!
that will come out in February, and I'm excited about that. And it's to have conversations just like this, really to advocate for leadership, equip leaders, and really be an encouragement to other leaders out there to let's stay in the game. We're making a difference. Sometimes it doesn't feel like we, in solopreneurship and entrepreneurship and in a lot of the other fields I've worked in, the fruit isn't immediate. And I think that's one of the things that's so hard to stay as a leader, because it's not like, you don't plant the seed and then tomorrow you have a full grown tomato plant. It takes a while. And that's how it is in entrepreneurship and solopreneurship and nonprofit. Oftentimes, and in education too, when I was a teacher, like I might not know that I made a significant impact in a student's life until they come back when they're 20 and tell me. Right? 10 years is a long
Yeah.
time to wait to know you made a difference. And it's like you were saying with your real estate, sometimes it's, that it's going to work, like your head tells you it's going to work, but it's a long fruit growth, right? Before you really see that fruit off of there to make it rewarding. And so we have to have some immediate rewards too, and a lot of times that's just in community and finding that community and building each other up and giving each other that encouragement that we need. And so the podcast is around that and building community for leaders and equipping them. So I'm very excited about that. I'll continue to host masterminds as I do. I don't have one active right now, but I'll be launching one probably in the spring. Again, toying with the idea of a membership too. So I'm working on a lot of different things, but trying to pace them well. But bottom line, equip leaders as best I can.
Now, do you have a boot camp coming up?
I do have a boot camp. So it's the Leaders Brand Boot Camp.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things that I see with leaders is we didn't even get into personal brands, but I do believe that we all need a personal brand. Even if you're in a corporate situation, you would benefit by building your own personal brand. And as leaders, the world is at our fingertips right now to give a positive influence in the world, and we definitely need positive influence in the world. And so this boot camp will be about helping leaders specifically build their own personal brands, and that can go into also their business brands. It's applicable to both, but specifically just getting some of these things down, having an authentic message, knowing who you want to serve, how you want to help them solve problems, and how you can get your messaging absolutely clear around that so you can go out and make a difference in the world. That'll be coming up in February. I have a wait list that people can join, but I'm really excited about that. I love boot camps, and I should say that's a free boot camp too. That's just a free thing that we're doing to kind of rally around leaders during this time of agility in our culture, and see if we can help leaders influence in a different way, because so many of us have, dare I say the word pivot, have changed the way we lead and then changed the way we do business. And so it's just finding another place to put our stamp of influence out there in the world.
Well, how can people follow you, and what's the best way to follow you and stay connected with you?
Well, if someone's interested in joining the boot camp, they can just go to DocShe.com/bootcamp, and that'll put them on the wait list if they'd like to do that. But I'm really trying to live in Instagram right now. I'm on all the socials as Dr. Sheila Cornea, and that's also my website. So someone can go and visit there and learn more about what I do. But if you want to connect personally, just DM me over there on Instagram, and we can start up a good conversation.
Great. I'm so glad that you were here with me today. Thank you so much.
I enjoyed it. Thanks for having me.
Well, thanks for joining me today. And be sure to grab all of Dr. Sheila's contact information and links right here in the show notes. Well, I know that I'll be following her podcast for sure. I truly love her concept of Gutsy Grace Leaders. If you haven't done so already, I'd be honored if you'd subscribe to this show in your favorite podcast player. And it would be extra special if you'd share your kind words as a review. Well, Thanks for listening, and until next time, have a fantastic week.